Washington State. One of the departments that wanted to commit felonies against me was Pierce County. 72nd in Tacoma. You get to see how the police treat mentally ill people. You see how they utilize the jurisdiction to get away with committing felonies. How going to that department to turn in predators in that department results in the victim being victimized further by that department. Holy shit, this country is fucked. Now we've got these counties wanting to sue the state because people in jails and prisons aren't getting proper mental health treatment. Jesus fucking Christ, most of them are innocent, for Christ's sake. Most of them are pissed off because everything in their goddamn lives was raped away from them so that cops and therapists could make a goddamn profit. Every state in the union. There is not a single police department in the country that is doing their goddamn jobs for the disabled. Not a single goddamn cop in America does their jobs. Not one of them. A physically disabled adult, the police have to do something about because they are mandated reporters. If that person's disabilities are hindering their ability, then you do have to make accommodations, safe accommodations for the victim. When it comes to the elderly, it's the same thing. That officer has to take those accusations seriously, and he has to do something right away. Because it's a physically disabled person or an elderly person. These are mandated reporters. Police, of all people, know how important their jobs as mandated reporters are. And yet, they will turn a blind eye to the most at risk out here. These fucking cops are too stupid to catch actual criminals. That's why they don't teach these officers how to catch actual criminals. They teach them how to disappoint, how to talk over a victim, how to treat the victim like trash. And of course, how to frame somebody for something they didn't do. Because you don't even have to frame them. You're an officer. It's just your word versus theirs. You call them mentally ill. And magically it's okay. As long as you can separate them from their friends, family, and loved ones for long enough, it's magically okay. If you prevent them from turning in the crimes long enough, then you can magically say, oh, well, you should have turned it in a long time ago. Motherfuckers, you know goddamn well I tried. And now I have recording after recording of attempt after attempt. The same goddamn bullshit every fucking time. The mentally ill tag. Every state in the union, police refuse to do their jobs for the most at-risk individuals in the country. Why are those called mentally ill? That's mentally disabled, just so you know. Mentally disabled. It is a handicap to be called mentally ill. It is an insult to our integrity as human beings. It is an insult to our intelligence and our experiences. It is an insult every single time. When you want to use it as an excuse, why, it's okay for Robert Farnsworth here in Tillamook, Oregon, to assault people, to threaten people's lives, to beat on women, to choke people out, to do this repeatedly, time after time after time. The thing is, there is nobody in the country who has a better case for suing the United States government than me. But the only ones you give a shit about are the ones with lots of money. An oil company feels insulted. What do? We appease the oil company immediately. Or we give them fines, right? You paying $1,000 fine might break the bank for you, might force you into homelessness. For you having to pay a $20,000 fine in the state of Colorado for operating as an electrician without a license, that's an awful lot of money. For General Electric, that's not jack shit. They can throw that money away 100 times a day at 100 different locations because they make more money than that. I wonder, do they get a tax break and a tax write-off for fines? They must. How are these companies able to profit off of us so greatly if they're not getting a tax break for that too? And meanwhile, we're supposed to keep our mouths shut. We're supposed to pretend it's not happening. We're supposed to look the other way and then complain when it happens to us. Right? Well, I didn't just complain when it happened to me. I complained when it happened to Christine Buhit. I created quite a shitstorm when it happened to Stephen McMillian. I spoke up about Rand Ingersoll and Amy Coney Kingery, and I even stuck up for those women. Rand Ingersoll was absolutely feeding those girls. Those girls were absolutely getting fed. And I'm not going to let Rihanna go down as if she wasn't feeding those kids. However, Rihanna was hitting those kids. And in that particular case, I'm on the kids' side. And why is that? Because I saw the abuse with my own two eyes. I tried to turn it in 3 times anonymously. I tried to turn it in 3 different times where I recorded it live on YouTube, this very channel. Ultimately, I had to pull some trash bags out of the trash cans. I didn't spread the garbage around. I just took the trash bags out, set them on the ground. And then I threw a cup of coffee down and $7 to pay for the goddamn coffee, even though Rand Ingersoll said that she was buying it for me that morning. Then Rand Ingersoll claimed that I stole the cup of coffee. That's what she was claiming. After the fact, what did she have to say about it? Well, she did it because she was angry, and that's the problem. We've taught girls that it's okay for them to do these things when they're angry, when they don't get what they want, when someone tells on them for doing something wrong. We've taught every woman in America that this is okay, and that they should gang up together against men. And unfortunately, we have also taught every police officer in America how to act like a woman. I'm not talking about a woman as in what a woman really is, a human being, flesh and blood. I'm talking about we've taught police officers to do the things that we've taught women to do when a woman does something wrong. You and your buddies gang up on him and destroy his life. I came forward about the abuse from Boulder Police Department years before I ever met Natalie. I was forced to come forward about the abuse I was enduring at the hands of her and her friends in November of 2016. By December of 2016, I'd gone to over a dozen people to try to get help. My life was being threatened and people were hurting me. People were threatening to kill me and my friends and family. I was being socially isolated, which is against the law. Nobody cared. Sure, I'm disabled, but I'm also a man, so I just need to man up. Right? Isn't that always how it is? NVRMND typed, "Hey man." Shaka. By the way, that doesn't mean devil like a lot of people think. It means shark. It also means cool. Shaka, baby, shaka. Here in the United States, also in Great Britain and Australia, there's a lot of what people want to throw out and claim as liberal, but it's not. Nevermind typed it's Ida Fiome from the other day. Or Ida, right? Ida? I know you type how to pronounce it. You get to see that the state wants to sue for more money. First, they get all these grants for helping the mentally ill. That's the problem, is that they're getting the money. They've already got the money. They've been getting the money for years. What does that mental health money go to? It goes to taking homeless people and sending them on an endless goddamn rat race to services that are literally miles away from each other, spread apart as far as humanly fucking possible. You have to go to the edge of town one direction for one service. You got to go to the other edge of town to go to the TFCC place. You got to go to the other edge of town to go to the other TFCC place. You got to go almost out of town to go to the Seniors with Disabilities place. And round and round we go. Nevermind typed, "Did you get to your place in the mountains?" Aha, you got it. It goes to shooting homeless people via cops. You're right, Nevermind. It does go to shooting homeless people via the cops. I didn't get up to my place in the mountains, no. It was pretty exhausting yesterday, the hurry up and wait, and that's what it is every day. This is the problem with cops not doing their jobs, is that I'm forced to hope that homeless addicts are going to help me. Meanwhile, Cynthia, she's got the same problems in these situations. When people are killing your friends and your family with fentanyl, or at least trying, yeah, that's a pretty severe fucking problem. It's a very real problem. Nevermind typed, "Oh, the guy I told you about is called Aaron Fletcher." What guy? I'm sorry if I don't remember. One, two, three, home free is this channel. Well, I don't need a whole bunch more people channels to look at. That's one thing that a lot of people like to send is help. What I need is someone to call all these different agencies with me and make them take it seriously by telling them how real it is. When they try to talk over me, someone needs to be able to speak up and say, "Hey, this isn't your story, it's his." When it comes to their jobs as mandated reporters, I need someone to act as a friend or family member. And when they start doing things that are against the law, that friend or family member needs to speak up. Hey, you need to take this guy seriously. You also need to take his disabilities seriously instead of talking over him. I don't choose my disabilities. Police officers get to choose, pick and choose whether or not I'm disabled at will. That's not just a felony. That's a multitude of felonies, especially when you're sending at-risk and disabled adults to their predators to have their predators investigate themselves. Pierce County, Officer Schneider, when I was trying to turn him in to his department as I'm supposed to, what did I get? I got the runaround. They sent me around in circles. Told me to go to a website that doesn't fucking work. How did I get my stolen things back? Well, I went to homeless junkies and asked them for help. And why did they help me? Because trauma, Trauma, is the gateway drug. Many of these people out on the streets, they started off with parents that raped them and beat them, molested them, did whatever the hell they wanted to them, and police officers, just like the police officers that you see every day, the ones who will help those of you who are in houses out, when they see us, all they see is junkie. All they see is mooch. They've been taught the same shit by their parents that you've been taught by yours. People who have never had to live it. And of course, then there's the nice people who have good intentions. Sure, they'll feed you a sandwich, but they'll never goddamn speak up. Nevermind typed, why don't you get some sheep? You can drink their milk. That's a great and wonderful fantasy. Where the fuck am I going to keep the sheep? Where am I going to get the sheep? Do I have any land? No, I don't. People want to send me to homeless shelters. That doesn't allow me a place to sit down and go through my goddamn evidence and do any of the things I need to do. It doesn't teach me how to do any of this stuff on the computer. But sure, let's get some sheep and drink their milk. My physical disabilities are very real. But the place I'm supposed to go to is mandated reporters because I'm physically disabled. Send me to mental health. I go to the mental health place. And they send me back to the physically disabled place. And back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And they all tell me the same thing. Oh, well, it's not our job to investigate. You got to turn that into the police. Well, shit, the police sent me to you instead. You're mandated reporters, they're mandated reporters, and instead of dumping me off back and forth between each other, you're supposed to come together and work together. And then these people say, oh, well, we do work together. No, table talking behind the victim's back is not the same as working with the victim. Having both the police and the mental health worker, or the physical health worker, the ASD worker, having the state-mandated reporters, these therapists that we're sent to, they're supposed to make sure that we're not blown over, that our rights as disabled people aren't walked over by police. And the police are supposed to make sure that our rights are not walked over by the state worker. That's why they're both supposed to be there with you and work together with you. They're supposed to listen to you. But they're not going to do that unless a friend or family member gives a shit. God damn it. Meanwhile, I got a bunch of autistic people, or people who claim to be autistic, to get on here and they say, hey, I'm autistic too, I'm autistic too. Yeah, and you're being a little bitch about it. Instead of telling me how fucking sorry you are, speak up. Yes, I know you have been victimized your entire life for speaking up. You try to get help when you're being abused and you get to hear, oh, well, you're mentally ill. Your older brother beats you up. You're supposed to fucking tell somebody. He beats you up a lot, but he automatically wins. He says, oh, she's mentally ill or he's mentally ill. Why do boys cut themselves? Sorry, why do girls cut themselves at 5 times the rate of boys starting at the age of 15? Because they're more likely to be hurt, and because self-destructive acts are acts of desperation. You've already tried talking to people. You've already tried going to your friends and your family to tell them what's going on. And what have they done? They've talked over you every time. You don't matter as a human being because you're autistic. And that is literally how it is because you don't speak up when it happens to others. You will just generalize. Your autistic friend Peter is getting fucking railroaded because he's autistic and people want to use the term mentally ill to pretend that he's fucking schizophrenic. Or, of course, Mary Jane Robinson here, trying to turn in her stepdad for abuse. And what did the cops do? Her uncle, Officer Reeves, an officer who we'd had recorded situations with him prior and after where people wanted to say he was a good cop. And then when they told us why he's a good cop, they all told us felonies he'd committed. That's not a good cop. You want to say, hey, why don't you go to a homeless shelter? Why don't you call the ASD place, the Autistic Spectrum Disorder place? Why don't you call this hospital or that hospital? They're in the area. I'm a homeless male, dummy. Does that not register in your head? I am a homeless male. Here's how it goes. I'm going to go in. They're going to ask me if I'm a veteran. No. Do I have any friends or family that can help me with this? None that are willing because I don't have any real friends or real family. I have acquaintances and relatives. So we got Pierce County trying to sue because they're spending money wastefully. See, we're not even talking about the money for the homeless here. We're talking about just the mental health money. Over $300 million last year. Over $300 million being used to spend time with pseudoscientists. Therapists today are the equivalent of measuring someone's head to find out how intelligent they are. Doesn't work that way. Head size does not determine intelligence, especially not in human beings. I've had all sorts of great ideas, and all of them depend on land. The money that I was supposed to have to take care of myself and get started, that money that needed to be spent to get myself into a place, to have a nest egg in case something fucks up. They had to pay me $22,000 altogether, $2,500 every 6 months. My first $2,500 got nearly entirely wasted on Kenneth Wilson and Leatha Plunkett taking advantage of me. Right after that, Natalie got her fucking brains blown out and all of my back pay. Every time I got those payments, I had to pay a bunch of money back to my predators or I had to spend it on paying people back for gas money so that I could go to fucking appointment after appointment after appointment where not one of these goddamn therapists did their goddamn job to work together with the police and take the situation goddamn seriously. None of these fucking people bothered to call Miss Peaches, aka Kayla Trujillo. None of them. Not a single goddamn one of them. None of them tried getting a hold of Alex Furman. None of them tried starting a goddamn investigation. All they wanted to do is shove me into housing. And then after I'm in housing, they pretend they did their job and that I am obligated to spend all of my money every month going to fucking appointment after appointment to pay fucking therapists. Meanwhile, I get told that these are free services. The government's paying this bill. I'm aware that the government is paying that bill, but I am required to go to these goddamn appointments every goddamn week, over and over again. It's 60 miles round trip for me to go see my goddamn therapist in Sidney, Nebraska, from Chapel, Nebraska. It's a full day out of my life to go do that. And that's just one of the obligations that they have. And when you have to do that every fucking week, you're talking about 4 days of your life that are wasted just on that service. This service that you're sent to because they're supposed to help at-risk adults who are being abused. And what do? They sit there, they listen to some of the shit that you're saying, and then they start talking about themselves. And they will say, have you tried this? And have you tried that? Have you tried talking to the police? Yes, yes, and yes. You know goddamn well that I tried talking to the police. Region 1, Nebraska. Back in 2016 and 2017, Region 1, Nebraska was well aware that I had tried talking to the police. That the police were the ones who made sure that I was hooked up with Nicole Peralta, the therapist, and Tamara. And Tamara was good at her job. In my opinion, Marcia Estrada didn't think so. But also, when I could have had help, why did that help stop? Because Tamara quit her job. I had to start over from scratch when Tamara quit her job. Meanwhile, the people at Region 1 wanted me to continue going back to Region 1, but they also wanted to pressure me to go to the Front Range of Colorado because that's where all the services that'll help me are. I went to the Front Range of Colorado. That's what got me stuck in a position where I was paying rent in Chapel, Nebraska at low income and paying rent at Kenneth Wilson and Leatha Plunkett's in Englewood, Colorado. That's what got me stuck having to live with drug addicts and drug dealers for 7 months before Natalie got her fucking brains blown out. Where these drug addicts and drug dealers had promised me that they were going to help me, and they didn't. That whole 7 months that I was there, it was just me getting ripped off. Or Leatha Plunkett literally ignoring my disabilities, requiring me to move heavy stuff because I'm a man and this is a man's job. She very much wants to have a traditional situation where the woman doesn't do any physical anything. That a man, even if he is too disabled to do so, is required to do so. And that's not the agreement that we made. And meanwhile, anybody can just change the deal whenever they want, and I am expected to just take the consequences of it. I am expected to spend my time, my money on these resources that are supposed to help me, only to be treated like I wasn't trying, or that it's not anyone's fault but my own that I'm broke. It's my fault that these services literally cost me hundreds and hundreds of dollars per month. It cost me $300 per month just to run around to all the different therapy places I had to go to. $300 a month before Natalie died. Nearly $300 a month for rent just in Chapel, Nebraska. $200 rent per month at Kenneth Wilson and Leatha Plunkett's, despite the fact that it was only supposed to be $75. Started off as $50. The reason that they wanted somebody there was because Leatha Plunkett was depressed because her daughter was killed. And having someone there made it less likely that Leatha Plunkett was going to kill herself. But all she does is buy stuff for herself, spend other people's money, smoke a shit ton of pot, and do absolutely nothing for herself to take care of herself. All she did was abuse her son. Now Misty Potter, lived with Kenneth Wilson and Leatha Plunkett before I was there. Misty Potter had to deal with that abuse in Colorado, also here in Tillamook, also in Washington State, also in the Astoria area. Lovely. Someone calling himself Ben typed opinion on the Airheadian Sisterhood. Ben apparently watches my channel. The Airheadian Sisterhood. This is, this is what I call the Aryan Brotherhood. This is a bunch of racist fuck nuggets that, well, they don't care what color skin you are as long as your money is green. But also, these are, unlike the KKK, who is primarily neighborhood based in your neighborhood, if you've got a KKK following in your town. The Airheadian Sisterhood is primarily jail related. There's a lot of tattoos that'll denote where you're from, where you got your tattoos, and what group you're with. If you have a shamrock, that's the Aryan Brotherhood. A shamrock tattoo is a prison tattoo. A lot of people have shamrock tattoos because they're Irish. Well, the Aryan Brotherhood isn't going to allow that. They'll require that you burn it off. Or join the Aryan Brotherhood. If they decide that you're not up to par, they'll burn it off. Or they'll beat you up until you cut it off of yourself, or scrape it off of yourself, or put a different tattoo over the top of it. The Aryan Sisterhood is a bunch of bullies, just like the cops. When an at-risk adult is abused, whether it's someone who is 65 or older, that would be an elderly person, or somebody who is physically disabled, or someone who is mentally disabled, we're supposed to turn it in right away. Well, what happens when I turn it in right away and I'm alone? I get sent to mental health. They set me up for an appointment 30 days away. I have to wait that long to turn it in. And then when I finally do get to speak to that mental health worker, it's that they don't want to do their jobs because they've got someone else lined up for immediately after your appointment. They don't get that money if they don't keep those appointments. They give you 50 minutes. And after that 50 minutes, They're trying to rush you out the door because they don't give a holy fucking goddamn about you. What they care about is that there's going to be a drug addict who's going to come in after you, and they get an extra 15 grand a year because he's a drug addict, as long as they can keep him going to their services for the entire year. $15,000. That does seem like a lot of money, but it's not when you're employing 12 to 15 people, like TCCHC is employing. Dual diagnosis is what they deal with primarily. That means that you have a physical disability or a mental disability, combined with another physical disability or mental disability, and or addiction. But the addiction gives them $15,000 a year. So they're going to focus mostly on addicts. But if they do their job as mandated reporters, then they don't get that money for that appointment with that addict. That's extra money because it's an addict. Yeah, there's a lot of money out there. Then there's the mental health money because it's a mental health issue. It's a dual diagnosis clinic. So now they're getting the mental health money and they're getting the addict money. And what are you getting? You're getting 50 minutes of your time where they're going to blow off what you're actually there for. They're going to get paid. You don't get anything out of that except for your goddamn time wasted and your predators getting away and you being right back out on the streets. When you go to TCCHC here in Tillamook for your 50-minute appointment, how long are you off of the streets? Maybe an hour and a half at most. That's if you show up way early and you stick around a few extra minutes reading pamphlets. After that, you're right back out onto the streets. As far as doing their jobs as mandated reporters, when you tell them about the crime and the evidence, they're supposed to call the cops immediately. The cops are supposed to show up. Someone from Adult Protective Services is supposed to show up. And the police and Adult Protective Services are supposed to be there at the same time, in the same room, with you, helping you, listening to you, trying to understand you. If you have disabilities, they don't get to talk over you. That's not their job. It is not their job to talk over the victim. It is not their job to sell their own fucking narrative. It's not their job to say, oh, well, are you sure this isn't what happened? No, that's not your fucking job. When it comes to the Airheadian Sisterhood, they're like any other racist hate group. They don't give a fuck who you are. It's about ease of victimization. When the Airheadian Sisterhood decides they're going to harm somebody, it's kind of like when people with BLM decide they're going to harm somebody. Those 4th of July artillery shells. That black man after one of them BLM rallies, when he decided that he was going to take it out on somebody, who did he pick? He picked a homeless person. Didn't care what color the homeless person was, because a homeless person isn't a person in this country. They're not considered a human being by BLM. They're not considered people by MMIW or MMIP. They're not considered human beings by this New Asiatic America, whatever it is, this group that's trying to stop the hatred and stop the abuse against Asian people. Then we got one for Jewish people. Man, Americans are just hateful people. You got to have somebody to take your shit out on, don't you? Your mommy and daddy teach you that it's the Jews, and they wouldn't take Christ as their personal savior. So they're horrible monsters. And you actually go out into the world and fucking spread that ignorance. Or you're taught as an evangelist that you have to protect the Jews. Evangelists are still taught that Jews are still God's chosen people, and that it is our jobs as evangelists to protect the Jews. But also it's our jobs as evangelists to twist the words of the Bible to suit our wants. To pretend that you can do whatever you want here on planet Earth and just pretend like you repent right before you die, and it's magically all okay. No, if you really believed in the Jesus, you wouldn't have done those things to begin with. What do I think of the Airheadian Sisterhood? I think that Nick, the manager at the McDonald's here in Tillamook, who's got a spider tattooed on his head right here, and he tries to talk like a vato. He's got Aryan Brotherhood tattoos. He's also a dick. The McDonald's here, as well as the Starbucks over at the Fred Meyer's here, these are both hangouts for racists. Primarily KKK, though. A lot of these people, especially many in the KKK, they want to go, oh, well, we're not the same. Most of us have never been to jail or prison. Whereas the Aryan Brotherhood, those are prisoners. These are specifically prisoners. There's Aryan Brotherhood that are not prisoners. Basically draftees. You're an Aryan brother. Your son's not a felon. He's a grade A student. But you're still teaching him that racism. And you're still bringing him into the fold. And it's horrible. With Pierce County basically suing itself for misappropriation of funds that it misappropriated. Oh yeah, Pierce County totally has the right to misappropriate millions of dollars. Literally millions of dollars. We're not talking about just a few million. We're not even talking about tens of millions. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars per year. Hundreds of millions in mental health money. Hundreds of millions. It's a lot. Hundreds of millions of homeless money. And then there's all of the distance between all these services that we're expected to run to. Every day we're running around to these services that are supposed to help us. For every one of them to tell us it's not their job. What do I think about the Aryan Sisterhood? I think if them bitches that I got to meet in prison spent more time actually working together as a brotherhood, working on each other's legal issues, working together to assist each other instead of working on who's going to get the drugs out of Michelle Destiny or whose turn it is and Officer Vicky. Instead of focusing on how to get a phone smuggled in by Officer Destiny. Or, well, making sure that you sexually satisfy Assistant Warden Sarah Nelson so that she'll let you have time out of your cell. Yep. All you got to do is become what they call peer support. But peer support isn't allowed to do anything in there. The worst unit to be on, you'd think that it would be the Alpha unit, because that's where bad cops and child molesters go. But no. That's a protected unit. Child molesters and bad cops get more protection in prison than anyone else. They don't get to go out on the yard with everyone else because they'll end up in a body bag. But the most victimized are the C2 unit, or the mentally ill unit. They inject these people with mind-altering medications that literally, the side effects mimic schizophrenia. Haldol and Ativan mixed together. a vial treatment. I mean, vial is in villain, not vial is in you take a vial of medicine. The Aryan Brotherhood doesn't run shit on the inside, though. I'm gonna let you know that, too. The brothers always run the yard. Always. No matter where you go, the brothers are gonna run the yard. And if they decide it, you're gonna pay rent. If you don't know what that means, you haven't been to prison. And if you haven't been to prison, I'm glad. I hope it stays that way. But the fact is, if you're drunk, it probably will not stay that way. Chances are you'll have to hang out with the Airheadian Sisterhood and listen to them talk about how big Billy badass they are. And about how they're just out to protect their own. The system is corrupt. Those who are called mentally ill, anybody who works with them, the job itself, and the ease of access to victims that nobody's going to listen to, makes it so that the mental health system is the most likely system for a person to get into if they want to abuse disabled people and the system. You become a therapist or a behavioral health person, you're going to get a lot of money just for doing jack shit, for refusing to do your job as a mandated reporter, for making excuses. On the inside, all of the gangs work together with the guards. All of them. No matter what color. Michelle DeCini was white, but she still smuggled stuff in for black people, for Hispanic people. The problem we got is that the police, there's this call, fucking harassing bullshit. Anyway, I got screenshots of the conversations here with the people who type at me. Y'all have changed the subject a few times, and I've done my best to interact as positively as possible. There's only so many times you can say, hey, I need someone to call these places with me, so that the situations are taken seriously. That's what I need. I don't need oh, well, there's a homeless shelter at this place. Or, hey, have you tried going to TFCC? Shit, so many times. Dr. Danelle Boggs, TCCHC. Tillamook County Community Health Centers. Because there's multiple buildings. They've got at least 3 or 4 buildings just in this town alone. That's a lot of money, isn't it? 3 or 4 buildings just in this town being paid for. Each one of them with close to a dozen workers at each one. Some of them twice that many. We're paying all these people's wages. All of their wages. For these homeless, disabled people to still be on the fucking streets, wasting their disability money to go to places like TFCC, TCCHC, Dr. Danelle Boggs, Deputy Reeves, Officer Martinez, Officer Loftman. We've gotten to hear the stories from their victims. Ben wants my opinion on the Airheadian Sisterhood. Well, much like the KKK, these asswipes are making it bad for all white people. All of us. All of us are treated like we're Aryan fucking sisters. All of us are treated like we're part of the clan. Fuck the Airheadian sisterhood. They can roast. Be it marshmallows or in hell. Makes no difference. They can roast.